If we don't remember Rome, we'll become it. Not in its glory, but in its fall. This isn't history, this is your house on fire. Rome fell long after it died, and America too will fall long after it has already died. What dies first is not the body of the empire, but its soul. And America's soul is in mortal peril. I'm sure you've heard this comparison before that America is Rome, but they all get it wrong. The real reason Rome haunts America's future goes unspoken. It's not just governmental and institutional overreach, corruption, or debt. That's all surface decay. Symptoms of a rotting edifice still standing but clearly dead. The true collapse is far more insidious. It's spiritual, structural, unseen. We didn't lose power, we lost meaning, we lost purpose. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." We've lost every why, and now we choke on our how. We didn't kill democracy, we killed the myth that held it together. The traditions that glued us to our freedoms. The morals that tied us to God and higher order. This isn't just decline, it's a disintegration of the divine. An abandonment of the sacred. The divine has been exiled, cast out from our cities and our hearts, and we kneel before nothing and call it worship. Section 1. Institutional rot and ritual without power. When institutions lose power, they do not vanish, they perform. They cling to ceremony, they dress their corpses in robes and call it continuity. The Roman Senate survived long after it had any power to rule. They gathered, they spoke, they passed decrees no one obeyed, but it was all theater. Power remained in form, but not in function. Once emperors ruled in all but name, the Senate became a stage, not a sacred chamber. The emperor sat between two consuls. If he proposed a bill, none dared oppose it. Every senator knew, oppose him, and your future ended. He decided who could run for office, who could be promoted, who would disappear. The Republic still held holy rituals, still mouthed its prayers, but the Roman gods no longer listened. This decay didn't strike. It seeped in, slowly, silently, over generations. Born of ambition, deepened by greed, it first turned bloody with the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius. Two brothers who dared to challenge the rot of Rome's ruling class. As tribunes of the plebs, they tried to heal a system too sick to save itself, to restore land, to break oligarchy, empower the people. And for that, they were murdered. By senators, in daylight, by a republic that had begun to devour its own. Their deaths were not the end, but the beginning. They were the first breath of a coming storm. Their blood marked Rome's descent, its first political killings, its first taste of civil war. Now the pattern repeats in America. Congress still meets, hearings are held, speeches echo off marble walls, but the laws and the true power come from elsewhere. Far from the marble halls of Congress, the nation does not wait for debate, it waits for executive orders, for court rulings, for unelected agencies to interpret law into power, to twist the law toward their agenda. The gridlock is the ritual of Congress now. The form of government is sacred, but the function is dead. Senators were once chosen to serve the people. Now they serve themselves, for status, appeasement, and the aggrandizement of organizations that the American people never chose. More concerned with re-election and enrichment than with the honor or service to America. One side blocks the other, not to govern, but to win power by making the other lose. And whoever wins, the American people still lose. They do not shape the nation, but halt its motion. Paralysis has become our greatest policy. In the late Roman Republic, policy could be bought. Crassus, the richest man in Rome, purchased favors, silenced rivals, raised entire armies. Crassus was the richest, but he wasn't the only one. In Rome, running for office meant borrowing fortunes. Lose the election and they take your coin. Win and they would take your soul. Politics became a gamble, and influence was the price of survival. The politicians no longer served the Roman people. Their loyalties were more insidious. Today we call that lobbying. The names have changed, the method has not. Over $4 billion a year is spent steering the Republic quietly. And that's the money we know about. Not to serve the American people, but to manage perception. To shape what cannot be voted on. This breeds quiet rage in those who still believe they lived in a democracy. Who believe that votes could change government and policy, only to realize democracy was a lie, and no one dared speak the truth. And if this makes the people desperate, they lash out, exercising what little democratic power remains to them, electing and following leaders who learn not to play by the rules. Because when people lose faith in deliberation, they do not beg for better senators, they beg for Caesars. They want action. They want order. They want someone who will burn the script and seize the reins of the government. Rome found its strongmen, and so have we, whether it's Trump on the right or Sanders on the left. They're opposite visions, but they have the same longing. End the charade and fix it. These people are not emperors, but the soil is soft, and the seed has already been planted. The fear of emperors haunts our Senate chamber, but the hunger for them is already in the crowd and the American people. The microphones are still hot, the lights still shine, but the power has left Congress. Section 2. Decay of myth and moral foundation. Temples still stood, altars were swept, incense still burned. The rituals of Rome went on, but the gods had long stopped listening. By the late Roman Empire, belief had become bureaucracy. Priests performed rites no one understood. Sacrifices were offered, but not with hope, only obligation. The people turned elsewhere for belief, to foreign gods, to hidden cults, to Mithras, Isis, Sol Invictus. Often brought in by a swelling number of foreign slaves, Rome needed to survive. Rome's gods had grown old, and they no longer answered the burning questions of the Roman people. And Rome's gods no longer answered themselves. The true spirit of Rome had flickered out like a candle on a dark night. A culture dies when its symbols no longer stir the soul. We Americans can relate to this feeling of hollow and empty theater. We say freedom, we say democracy, we say equality, but we do not truly believe them. We sell them as ads, campaign slogans, and cultural exports. We tweet them, often feeling deeply for these American values, wishing for their return, yet we sense these principles have abandoned us, so we cry out in our loneliness for their return. We wrap them around hollow policies, hoping to reignite a flame snuffed out before we were even born. We dress them in myth and history. These principles guided our country, but we cannot call out for American freedom, equality, and democracy while ridiculing their origin. Even our founding myths of creation have been attacked. Where once we revered our founding fathers, now we call them racist. Once we admired their wisdom, now we call them short-sighted. Once we idolized their courage, now we tear them down because to leave their legacy standing would be too great a shame for our generation to bear. We hate standing on the shoulders of giants because it reminds us we have done so little with their gifts. Our founders are either memed or martyred, idolized by a small number of people, but mostly demonized, and they call this demonization historical context. We've never truly understood our founding fathers, nor their founding principles. Our national religion is no longer virtue, it's cynicism, and we wear it like armor, because reverence is too dangerous, and responsibility too burdensome. We are strangling our own history. Our myths have begun to die by our own hands. You feel it, everybody does, but no one dares name it. Not in the classroom, not at the dinner table, not even in our own thoughts. When a society's myth dies, the body soon follows. Rome's body stood for centuries after the soul had left it, after Roman virtue had been strangled from Roman society, and even Romans felt it, though none dared name it. We forgot that truth, because the collapse doesn't come with a scream. A true collapse, the spiritual one, comes with a shrug. a laugh, a viral clip, and nothing sacred left to kneel for, nothing reverent left to love, nothing holy left to fight for. So people trudge through life bleary-eyed, hollow. They don't know why. They don't see the truth. Their pain comes from the death of society's soul. And it all began when the myth died. Democracy didn't die in the streets. It died in the soul. Because we killed the myth that made democracy worth dying for. Section 3. Gestaltic failure. The body didn't break, the soul did. It's not the parts that fail first, it's the space between them. Relationships, trust, shared rhythm. That's where collapse truly begins. Gestalt teaches us that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But in a dying empire, even if the individual parts still function, they stop fitting. The machine doesn't break, it just stops moving. In Rome, the gears were buried in undergrowth, drowned in bureaucracy, overlapping offices, and power structures that existed only to maintain themselves. In America, the gears are disconnected, fragmented identities, contradictory systems, a national culture that no longer agrees on what is real, let alone what is morally right. Public health. We have world-class hospitals, brilliant doctors, and cutting-edge technology, and yet millions avoid treatment because they fear the bill more than they do the illness. We don't have a healthcare system, we have a health debt system. Insurance doesn't prevent suffering, it outsources it to collections, to bankruptcy courts, to families who crowdfund for insulin and pray that their child doesn't get sick again. In Big Pharma, it doesn't want cures, that kills customers. They don't treat disease, they manage symptoms just enough to keep you coming back sick and paying. Even life has become a subscription. And during a crisis like COVID, no trust nor coordination. Truth became tribal. Doctors were politicized, turned into weapons for competing agendas, and hospitals ran, but the system lagged. The pills ship, profits rise, but the people, they rot in fear, debt, and quiet rage. The parts worked, the whole failed. Military-industrial complex. $1 trillion defense budget, unrivaled global reach, unparalleled technology, but no shared mission. Only competing branches that seek more funding, government-appointed generals out of touch with their soldiers, just as politicians are with the American people. I've spoken with veterans who gave their youth to sand and gunfire, and returned home to a VA clinic that couldn't refill their medication. They bled for a flag they now see stained by politics, abandoned by policy. Veterans don't ask for parades, they only ask for meaning, and still no one answers them. Imagine giving your leg to a war that Congress doesn't remember voting for, then watching your country debate pronouns while the VA puts you on a 6-month wait list for mental health treatment. Is it a wonder that so many veterans ask, what did I even fight for? We don't send men to war to defend our freedom anymore. We send them to defend contracts. We let them come home and rot in silence. This isn't defense, it's extraction. We fight endless wars we never define for principles we barely understand and no longer believe in, squandering billions of taxpayers' money that they just can't afford. We spin like an empire, but we fight like a confused child. The soldiers serve, the contractors profit. The people shrug, and the war goes on because the system doesn't know how to stop. Education. Our universities are still admired, but quickly becoming the butt of jokes, as our sacred places of knowledge are turned into training grounds for political radicalism. Enrollment is declining as young Americans lose faith that university degrees will guarantee jobs. Our students are still in debt, more every year, lured by all of society, parents, government, and teachers, framing college as necessary for success, granting enormous and ridiculous loans while giving careless advice. Follow your passion. Do what makes you happy. Such financial wisdom. Some children never even sign the loans themselves. Their parents do it for them. facilitating financial slavery in the name of love. Answer this. If a bank won't give a $30,000 loan to an 18-year-old for any reason, why would the government give them a $30,000 loan to study psychology? An even more troubling question, why would the study of psychology cost $30,000? Americans lead their own progeny into financial tyranny, then blame them as they come of age for being financially irresponsible. I have met very few financially responsible 18-year-olds. We hand tens of thousands of dollars to them, to the financially naive, then blame them for what we train them to do. It's like kicking a dog for trusting the hand that fed it lies. Our schools still operate, but to teach what? To think critically? Or to conform soullessly? No shared moral compass, only shared hatred for the values that once held us together. No unified history, just a hunger to tear, erase, and desecrate Western culture. One curriculum preaches that America is flawed but redeemable, another says it's irredeemable, guilty, and evil, and a third avoids the question entirely. This is not education, it's ideological roulette. We didn't just lose God or order, we lost each other. Rome drowned in complexity. America is dissolving in contradiction. Failing institutions, each a node floating, each spinning in its own self-interest. A system can survive greed. It can survive decay. What it cannot survive is disintegration, the atomization of purpose, people, belief, the severing of the connective tissue that once made a people a mission, a future, the death of Western culture. What remains when the culture that once bound it all together is no longer taught, no longer loved, no longer permitted? Nothing but ashes and echoes. But the real cost wasn't in marble halls or sacred myths. The real cost wasn't so cheap. It was in our sons, our daughters, our neighbors, and the grief no one dares to name. And that's where we'll go next, in part 2.